Today's session is going to be facilitated by Shariff. Shariff, I had a chance to meet him back in England about 2 months ago, 2 or 3 months ago, and I was impressed with his involvement with the local community and all the work he does with Aaron. He'll tell you more about what they do, their stories as well as individuals. So Shariff, thank you so much for
No,
being here today, and the floor is to you.
thank you. Well, afternoon, everybody, or morning, or evening, wherever you are. Thank you for having me. So today we're going to community, and what does community mean? See, my work, I believe, sits at the intersection of community, connection, and also human well-being. See, I've seen how powerful it is when we create environments where honesty is welcomed and support is shared. And I basically am a leader of a part of a group called Men Share Listening Group here in Crawley, where I facilitate support circles weekly with men who are going through all sorts of difficulties, from addiction, suicide, ideation, depression, post-traumatic stress, anxiety, divorce, parental alienation, all of these kind of different issues. And my role is a voluntary role, where I do a lot of the engagement lead on behalf of MenShare, or go into the community. I will use the digital space and to promote. I will attend mental health forums. I'll look at creating partnerships for the CEO, and general fundraising and mentoring. We also go into like schools and talk to young men. But we also have a network of men and women who have come together to support the work of MenShare through their own professional competencies, from breathwork coaches to life coaches, counselors, therapists, ice baths, you name it. We nature retreats. We do all of these kind of things just to try and give a holistic experience as well as a therapeutic one to men. That's essentially our focus, and to try to transform their lives. And what we try to do is empower them from their difficulties, and encourage them through discipline, growth, accountability, and respect. And I myself have created, with the permission of the founder, a little podcast channel on TikTok where we talk about all the different kind of issues that men are going through, from divorce to anger versus aggression to uh, reacting to versus responding, all of these kind of nuanced kind of conversations that need to have, so that men are taking accountable choices for their lives. They are responding in the correct way. Their mental health is better, their world space is better, and that they can actually flourish from difficulty. We, as leaders, all of ourselves have come through our own difficulties, and we've gone through the process of learning how to become emotionally mature and intellectually mature. I think is two of the greatest gifts that we've been given as a result of MenShare. But I think the beauty, and what we're going to talk about in regards to community work, is that when you go out into the community, it's you're learning from others. You're absolutely learning from everybody else. We're learning from all of the shared experiences, and the collective lessons of other men and our peers. And the goal is that you go away more nuanced as a person, more self-aware, which I think a lot of us in today's society struggle with, being self-aware when we're totally consumed by the digital age. And that's one section that will hopefully a little bit later on we'll be coming on to, what digital does for the community as opposed to what it might not necessarily do that is of benefit. So I've kind of divided up this session into a couple parts. And the first part I do want to talk about is what community means to me. And then maybe I'll ask you guys on the floor what community means to you. So to me, community is a space where people feel seen, feel heard, valued, without a need to perform or pretend. There's also a network of shared responsibility. See, well-being is held collectively, not individually. And that's one thing I like to think that Mensha as it brings is a as a shared responsibility in the wellness of those within our community. Um, a living system built on trust, consistency in human presence. Our circles are based on the men being present. It's built on trust, where everything is in confidence and where we share. And a reminder that healing accelerates when people don't have to feel or do it alone. And I think that's one of the greatest gifts of community work is that people feel supported and they can come together and they're not doing it necessarily alone. So I guess one of my first questions to you all, and I've got 8 for this session, is that what does community actually mean to you guys?
Shariff, before I have a go at answering that question myself, at the start, did you mention something about ideation? Because you were talking about how Mensa resolves quite a few challenging problems, but then I think you mentioned ideation. Did you say that? And
Yeah, I
why
did
do you mean?
suicidal ideation.
Yeah,
Ideation
what?
is that
Yeah, what is
you
that?
do get men who come along and they contemplating the idea, the process within them of, well, should I be around? Do I necessarily need to exist? Am I gonna take my life? And then obviously that's when, as a group, you're looking at putting the policies and procedures we have in place to protect these men and make sure that they're not feeling that vulnerable. And if they are getting taken to the hospital and
Oh,
get
okay.
supported, to make sure that they don't actually go through with something like that. Because with suicide, and it's one thing we try to prevent, is that a lot of people are very good at masking it. Some people talk about it, and some people don't take them seriously. Some people can be the most happy, cheeriest person in the room. Next thing you know, they're taking their life. It's one of those ones where you can't stop. You can try to fight a good fight against it, but what we've learned is somebody's going to do it. They're actually going to do it. But then the nuances around that is what led up to that. How can it be prevented in future? How's the aftercare for their family? What's the legacy they leave behind? All of these things. Because I think
Got
one
you.
thing that we've learned about suicide is that if we can't understand what level or to what extent or to what degree does somebody feel that they need to end their life,
Mm.
and if we did, then we'd probably be that person as well. Do you know what I'm saying? So there's certain things in life and certain people in life and certain thought processes and whatever that you can't necessarily understand, and so it's trying to some degree be a support network and understand that each individual their experiences is very very different.
Mm.
The themes are the same, they manifest just in different ways, and it's trying to find how can you support that, how can you alleviate that, is there uh,
Yeah, got you.
professionals that we can guide them to. So we're not professionals, but we're a support network of
Yeah.
men who sit there and say, well, you know what, we can refer you, we can guide you, we can take you, we can support you, and all of this kind of thing.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I think when you said ideation, I was thinking something slightly different, but yeah, that makes sense. That's interesting. I've never heard it used like that. Cool.
Cool. So
There
yeah,
is a
what does
question from Carl or a hand up.
So, Shariff, on a slightly lighter note, you mentioned the cold bars of nature, and I mentioned my swim on the first of each month. I joined a new community 3 months ago, and I joined the monthly swim, and with that, I got invited to coffee, and before I knew it, I was part of a crowd of men of about 30 or 40. So on a my decision to do the early morning swim led to immediately being part of a very big crowd of community.
Wow.
And yeah, so it was all very, very positive. And the temperature on Friday is expected to be about 10 degrees as we do our jump in the sea.
Carl, where do you go swimming?
Anyway, it did work. It was a good idea.
Carl, where do you go swimming?
Oh, I'm in a little coastal village in the South Africa, and
What about the great white sharks?
no, they're not going to come to that. It's very shallow, and but there
Carl,
are great
come on, man.
whites, but
Yeah, I know that. Come on, Carl, they're freaking dangerous.
yeah, but they're probably not going to when there's 200 of us swimming. They're probably not going to arrive. Not that time.
Like
But why-
200
why-
chicken,
day
can-
anyway.
200
can I-
chicken nuggets flying around. That's bloody so
Carl-
scary. I would never go there, honestly.
Carl, can I ask you a
Well,
question? Can I ask you a
yes.
question, Carl? So, this group essentially just came together for swimming, right? Or was there a bigger
Yeah,
purpose?
once a month. Yeah, on the first of each month at sunrise.
Is there a special reason that the group came together?
For all the reasons you've just mentioned, it's community, building community, meeting people, getting to know people. I mean, obviously, mainly people who live here go, but I believe it can get up to 400 people on a morning swim. And then obviously in summer, that morning swim is going to be more like 5:30 in the morning. At the moment, it's about 7:15 in the morning.
And so the beautiful thing is, right, it can start from something very small and it can grow into something very big. Like Menshare
Yeah.
started in 6 years ago, just after COVID, due to some suicides in the area, right? It's to like 1,000 plus over the last 6 years within our community. So it just shows you the power of growth, the power of community, the power of peer support, the power of networking, etc., etc. And like, believe it or not, the cold water dips are great for your mental well-being because of the
Yeah.
oxytocin and the serotonin. And what we've learned with cold water therapy is that it allows you to control your thoughts because you're concentrating not being cold. So if you've got an overactive mind or an overactive imagination, or you've got something troubling you, that's why we have
Yeah.
cold water therapy. It dispels that at that moment and that time your need is to focus on the breath work, to focus on not being cold, and suddenly you're very focused and you're very in a particular zone. And these are just the kind of sort of holistic things that we bring to the group.
So all the reasons you mentioned creates a camaraderie because we're all in it together, we're all doing it together. So when we come out the water and we say, "Oh, let's go for coffee," then suddenly everybody's going because we built up that we all did it together thing. And along with all the physical, chemical reactions that happened while we were and the thing about it is firstly you have to have a photograph taken. So this is not take off your tracksuit and rush into the water. You got to take your time and take the photograph and then go and have your swim. So this is not going to happen in 2 minutes. It's going to be more like 10 minutes in the cold. But there's a camaraderie that goes with it, plus all the physiological conditions that you mentioned. The whole lot works together in a very community spirited way.
Yeah,
It works very
good.
well.
And anybody else on what community means to them?
Yeah, Mark has a hand up.
My question is, when you talk about community, does it matter if it's a paid community, an organic community like what we just talked about, or if the owner has a specific purpose? Like when there are different types of communities. My thought is, what are you thinking when it paid versus just open to everyone?
This is a completely free service that we provide, and we're all volunteers. And so what it highlights is I would say, the failure of maybe local government or bigger government in terms of respect of the services that they provide and put in place for vulnerable people within social or health needs. And so these kind of groups have started to arise. There are bigger charities in the UK who obviously have a lot of funding behind them, but they don't necessarily they've got a sort of more of a national approach as less opposed to what we do. What Mentor was more of a localized community approach within the surrounding areas, because not everybody can access those bigger ones. And so how do we make money? We don't. We just try to fundraise. We put together the network of people who come and offer their services. And so what I'd like to think it shows is that despite the challenges around monetary issues, for example, there are facilitators and there are groups out there that are willing, because of the cause, to be motivated by the cause, to put their time, their efforts, and their energies into giving back. And that's the kind of thing that we are. For myself, I see it as a great honor to be able to lead men, to have men look up to me for some counsel and guidance, but also that I am now immersed in a community of well-being practitioners and therapists, etc., who I can also lean on, but I can also refer them these gentlemen too. And that's that's the nuanced nature of it all. We do it for the intention, not the attention. You might sit and think, wow, that's very self-serving, but that's how it is within this particular locality and this particular group that I belong to.
Yeah, I love the three pictures behind you. What's the fourth one behind your chair?
Oh, Prophet Muhammad.
Prophet Muhammad. Cool.
They're my four leaders. They're my four leaders.
Thank you for your presentation today.
Thank you.
Hi, Sharif. As you were talking, I really realized something very interesting. You know, I used to live in the UK, and I just realized that in the UK there is a lot of like talking about community is a thing. Okay, is a thing that naturally happens. The local community, this community. But then I've been back in Italy for 4 years, and I was just elaborating this thought. Actually, we don't really talk about community here. And I was starting to think, okay, why is that? And part of it, I think it's because there is more like the state structure in terms of local support when it comes to mental health, you know, or health in general, or social services would be stronger, would be more present. But also it's because there is more reliance on family ties, friends, or local people that you actually know. So I think it's very interesting to see how the word community and the idea also changes from state to state, right? Because in the UK probably it was more evolved. Here instead it's still a bit more traditional, no?
But community is also ethnic issues around it as well. So like we tried to set up a one dedicated to the Asian community, the Pakistani community, but they are not so willing to talk about their mental health issues or their problems or the difficulties in an open space. So they rather keep it within their community. And I found that's something we wanted to spearhead, and that was very challenging for us to even be able to achieve that. But what you find is that with MenShare, we're kind of lucky in that it's all men of all colors, of all faiths, of all background, who come and put the individual identity or community that they belong to outside the room. And they just come in the room and they're just men. And nobody's looking at them in any other way to what faith they might be, what they belong to, where they're ethnically from, black, white, etc. It's just like, what's your issue? What's your mental health problem? What's your well-being issue? And then so then what we've done within that circle environment is create a community of its own. And the beautiful thing about the project that we've done, or what the leader, a gentleman called Sean Orr, has done, is that he's taken it not only as those circles that are facilitated on a weekly basis, but it becomes community activities like nature weekends, nature walks, meetups, walk around the park, go for a coffee, help fundraise, all of that stuff. And suddenly community doesn't mean that you belong to a particular dynamic now or demographic. You belong, you just belong. And I think that's the problem with society. It's broken down. It's become so polarized globally. This world has become so polarized by ethnicity, by borders, by religion, by everybody's forgotten about humanity. What are we? We're humans. What sits at us? Humanity. What is it that we're meant to do? Collectively be there for each other, to celebrate each other. I watched the Odyssey yesterday, and there were some of these lessons that came out of me. One of them, that you're never looking down upon anybody. Because you've got to come from a place of, well, this is what we do, where they sit. So you really, really understand where they are, and then you work as to how you build them back up, how you make them engaged with themselves again, and engaged with society as a whole and community again, and all of these kind of things. And it's like these are the subtle nuances that exist between us as people. But it's like it seems that social media, the digital space, the media narrative, and all of these things just they don't contribute positively in any way. And that's probably one of the things we'll talk about later with regards to all of that as
well. There is a hand up from Louis, please.
Hi, yeah, it's very interesting. This, I just a couple of observations that I have is that I find now that cities I really don't want to go in anymore. I live in a small hamlet outside a town, and there is a natural community here. Everybody's close to the earth. Everybody's um, interdependent. You know, everybody. I know that I could just walk out and talk to a neighbor, and they'd help me if I needed it. And and you don't get that in the city where there's a lot more pressure, obviously. But the point I wanted to pick up on was that one of ethnicity that you mentioned,
Mhm.
in that I was in a men's group for a while back, and what I found interesting was that it was a global thing online, and it seemed to me that those ethnic groups in far places, you know, in rural Africa and places like this, India, all sorts of places, they had much better take on life, and they had a lot more to teach the people living in the cities in the Western world in terms of, you know, honor community, family, things like this, standards of friendship and responsibility and things like this, because they weren't involved so much in this digital world and in the city life that basically isolates people. But I was just interested in that. You know, when you talked about ethnicity, I found it was a big plus sign to mix that in
Yeah,
with everything that was going on.
yeah, no, and it's right. And within all those individual communities, there's some beautiful things, right? And
Mm,
it's how they then can take that and bring it to the wider community, as opposed to either being polarized or very isolated. And that's a conversation that is had a lot within the UK about whether communities integrate properly and all of that kind of stuff. I'd like to sit there and think, you know what? My heritage is Mauritius and Trinidad. I'm a Muslim man, and I'm in a group, on a Monday talking with black, white, brown, or faith or no faith, gay, whatever background, right? But we're talking about just human issues. So we're
mm.
learning to put our differences outside, because that's what I'm saying. The problem is with communities that we're looking at other people, and we're if we are not educated about the nuances of that community, then the stereotypes begin, then the prejudices begin, and all of these kind of things. Is trying to be able to break it down, like these four great men behind me on the wall behind me would do. What was their moral code? It was, I'm led by these guys here who with their leadership, and what they did for society and mankind as a whole, and that's I'd like to sit and think is the principal reason behind community work, doing this kind of thing, supporting people, making sure that every life is valued and nobody's taking their life, and that no matter the who you are or where you belong to, whatever difficulty you're going for at that particular time, is that we can help you, we can try and assist you to some degree. But the beauty of our group is that we want to empower your collective responsibility yourself, so you don't become reliant, because then what happens with community is sometimes people then become reliant as opposed to self-sufficient, and we want men to be mentally self-sufficient, emotionally self-sufficient, physically self-sufficient, so then they can be able to then deal with the narratives of their life in the correct way. So it's the responding, not reacting. It's knowing how to discharge your affairs in a way that, I mean, my mum always says to me, over the last 6 years she's seen a massive change in who I am, and that's good to know. And a lot of men tell me that as well. I don't. I try to keep a humble estimation of myself. I don't sit there and know who I am. I just know what I'm trying to be about, and I can let people like Aaron or Sunny say what they think or they know about me and what I do in this particular space. But that's kind of like we want to do. We want them to be able to walk out the door, whatever childhood trauma they've gone through, whatever difficulty they're currently going through, whatever their addiction problem is, because they can't face it. We've learned with addictions, people are doing addictions because they're masking. They don't have the mental, emotional, cognitive ability to be able to deal with that. And these are kind of things that sit within all communities. Do you know what I mean? You might have the Muslim with the addiction and the drink problem. He's too scared to talk about it. But what he can do is come to our circle, because nobody's going to sit there, and he can tell us, and we can be right. Okay, let's get you the help that you need. And I think that's how it needs to be. You need to be amongst everybody, not and not just for somebody, but for everyone. And I think that's where society seems to fall away.
Can I just ask you one more thing? I just
Yeah.
wondered how you handle these groups, so that because one of the things that we experienced was people were dumping, or there were people giving bad advice. Do you have ground rules and
Yeah.
yeah.
We have ground rules. We all have a code of confidentiality, code of conduct. We remind the member we're a listening group, and so we're here to listen. And if there are any matters of advice, we will share what might be our experience and what tools might be able to assist them in their particular situation. If there's anything that's medical, or if there's anything that requires further intervention, then we have that network whereby we then guide them and make a referral for them, and then they go on. So it's kind of like we're like but the beauty is as well, we kind of have like GP practices and NHS referrals come to us because of the body of work that's been built up over the last 6 years. There's that respect and that reputation now that we have as an organization that's very professional. It's we all go through training, regular training, just how to run a circle. But then we'll go away and we'll study. I myself have studied levels 2 and level 3 in counselling skills, and I want to progress that even further. Why? I don't have to, but I wanted to give the men a better experience. And again, that's down to my own individual responsibility to make sure that the experience the men are getting is a good one and is a correct one. And that's what I think about means by giving back to community, is that if you're going to do it properly. Don't do it half-heartedly. Make sure you're all in, because what happens is people then see your integrity, they see your truth, they see your honesty, and they see what you truly try to represent.
Now, obviously, we're all part of ExpertEase, and ExpertEase is a community that's online. But I want to know, like, who here belongs to a local community outside of Carl?
Well, I wouldn't call them local in terms that communities also a group of people who get together because they either have a common interest, a common goal, or a common belief, and so on. So I belong to a few of them in places where for example, where I've studied or and things like that. And here in Latin America, it's like Gabriel was mentioning, people tend to rely more on their families and close friends. Nonetheless, men in particular are not keen of talking about their emotions and opening up and so on, even within their families. And that is really a challenge in that sense. Before COVID, we created a group where men could only assist to get this kind of support, and it fell apart. We got together for a few months and then it just drifted away. It's very difficult because still there is this, I don't know how to call it, chauvinistic or macho culture where you have to be strong and do not show your emotions and so on. So in Latin America, except Argentina, where at least they use a lot of therapies and psychologists and so on, is the more developed country in that sense. In the rest of the country, it's very difficult.
Shariff, I'm sure I read somewhere very recently that the suicide rate in the United Kingdom, particularly for men, is increasing at an alarming rate, and more among men than women. Did I read that correctly?
Yeah, I can't remember the statistic, but it is very, 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 very high. And
Yes.
and the issues around it are very much like cost of living, unemployment, men not getting access to their children, depression, all of these things all lean into each other. And the founder of Menshare called it the ripple effect. So for example, you lose your job, right? Next thing you know, you got debt worries. Next thing you know, you got mood swings. Next thing you know, you're suffering from depression. Next thing you know, you'll be hitting the bottle and turning to the drink. Then you're taking it out on your wife. Your wife doesn't want to do it anymore. She wants a divorce. Next thing you know, you've lost your home, you've lost your wife, you've lost your kids, you've lost your job. Right, what's next? And then some men don't have the emotional capacity to deal with that, but they'll end in their lives. And that's and like the point was raised around the stigma around men, that a man's just got to be able to suck it up. He's got to be able to provide. He's got to do it all, and he can't complain and he can't talk about it. Those are old stereotypes that need to remain where they back are in the past, because it doesn't take into account a man's situation or a man's ability to cognitively or emotionally process all of the things that he might be going through in life. And so therefore he resorts to destructive habits as opposed to positive habits to be able to get himself out of his situation. And so this is why we kind of exist. And it's good that Alfredo raised the point about people not wanting to talk about their problems. And this is one of my other things, like, what stops people asking for help? Fear of being judged, misunderstood, or seen as weak, not knowing how to articulate what they're feeling or what they need, past the experience where reaching out didn't go well or wasn't met with care, the belief that others are coping better or have more on their plate, and a lack of safe, accessible spaces where vulnerability is normalized. And this is what is stopping people asking for help. Sorry, Safi, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, the way I understand it is a community, like your community is around mental health, but it could be any sort of like community around a different sort of topic. We already lost 3 women in half hour. So I just want to say to Joanna, the topic is not around men issues, it's around community in general. So just
I've noticed that the women dropped,
yeah.
and I believe it's missing responsibility from the women's side. We are bringing kids on the planet. We are the #1 source of education, and it's up to us to raise stronger men and to make sure that they don't go through the emotional turmoil that they're going through. So to be honest, I'm kind of annoyed that they dropped off the call.
Yeah.
Do I want to hear it?
And-
No, I
and-
don't want to hear it in a way. I don't want to deal with it. But do I believe it's part of my responsibility? Absolutely.
Well,
And
thank
and
you,
and,
Joanna.
and
We're
that's
on the
great
same
from
wavelength. So perfect.
And then that's great from Joanna as well, because like you will find that there are women groups as well, right? And then everybody's here to help everybody, but then what happens is, in some degrees, it's polarized, because then there's the whole gender issue of man, woman. The man's affected by the woman, or the woman's affected by the man, and they don't want it, and they don't want to hear this. But we are accountable to each other in how we behave to each other, be it man, be it woman, or children. We all have a collective responsibility to emotionally regulate, be emotionally intellectual, and how we deal with the issues that we're all dealing with in this particular space. Because then it just leads to bigger problems, bigger issues. And I think people don't like to be confronted by all of these difficulties, because then it challenges not only maybe deep-seated stereotypes or deep-seated beliefs that they currently have already about the opposite sex, etc., and how they are meant to be, or how they're meant to behave, or how I should treat them, or how the system within the legal framework of the United Kingdom, for example, I don't know what it's like elsewhere, leans heavily in favor of the female but penalizes very good men. And then these very good men then need a support network or a community. They then go take their life because they're not getting it. And so it needs, these are conversations, and community groups are conversations that need to be had with respect and with mature dialogue in order for things to be able to move forward and progress.
Thank you. Mark, and then Gabriella.
So when I raised my hand, the question was, am I a part of other communities? Well, I'm a part of a church community, and there are 2 offsprings off of that group. One is for men, where we get together and we talk about things that men deal with. And there's another one that's more like for couples, but we never call it couples. And then my favorite group, of course, is ExpertEase. My favorite community is ExpertEase. And I'm here with this one today. So those are the communities I belong to, and they all serve a very different purpose.
Thank you, Mark.
Great, you say, because there's one bit here where it was like, how do we take community into the workspace? And ExpertEase is about the workspace, right? And it's about shared learnings and the promotion of individuals and what they can bring to a particular environment. And so, like, do we build environments where people can speak honestly without fear of consequence? Do we create peer support spaces or circles or check-ins that mirror community? Do we train leaders in emotional intelligence or trauma-informed communication or active listening? Do we encourage shared responsibility for well-being, not just in the community, but in the workspace? And all of these kind of things. Or do we take or integrate community values and consistency and presence and empathy and collaboration, and we bring that into everyday culture again, in the community, in your places of worship, in your own homes, in the workspace? It's where all of these things are built. I don't know how anybody else feels about that as well. I mean, Aaron, you're sitting there quietly. I know you can offer a lot here. Come on.
Well,
Hey,
Gabrielle?
can I just comment on what you just said first?
Oh,
So
sure.
I think every community has its own nuances, right? Like we don't talk religion or we don't talk big politics here. That's not the purpose of this community. It's to help
No,
us all
right.
grow in our businesses and in life. And so I think sometimes a community only works when each of us knows why we're together and contributes to that and not try to start their own agenda.
No, that's 100%. And that's it. And I think the beauty of our group, for example, like with the men share, is that the it's not an agenda, but the program is facilitate the well-being of vulnerable men in the local community.
Yeah, let's hear from Aaron after Gabriella. Gabriella first, please.
Yeah, and the thing you were saying is very interesting. The fact that there needs to be a specific objective, let's say, for the community. One of the things recently I've joined a group, like in Italy, we got more associations rather than communities. So I was part of a political party. I'm still part of it, but it sort of died off because of internal things within the party, which was very interesting to observe. But also associations. Do you ever find in England, because this is an interesting thing, what I find here, for example, is that people and I think Alfredo will probably relate to this. People will always be a little bit or quite mistrusting. So if someone organizes a community for whichever reason, it can be to pick up litter, it can be to local promotion, it could be for local heritage, it could be for anything. The first thought that any person here, born in the south of Italy, will have is who is doing this for this objective, or this objective, which could be, money gain or getting influence or getting recognized and then bring people in a business, or they will always have this kind of double thing, which does not much happen in the UK. But have you met these? Do you have that kind of pushback or not?
What do you mean, as in what, from people thinking that the person who's doing the community group is for another agenda, another cause?
Exactly, yes. Do you get a lot of that? Or?
No, and I'd like to think with our group, no. It's very hard to do. You do find in the digital space, there's so many helpers, counselors, therapists, life coaches, etc. Are they doing it for the credence? Are they doing it for the clout? Are they doing it from a sincere place? Then that would just be me sitting there questioning their intention. So I don't like to question people's intention. I trust them in the intention that they're actually coming and doing it. And we would hope that would be the same with the local group and community group that we have here. We have a sister share as well. If the ladies had remained, we have a sister share group as well. So we're not just solely focused on men, but my activity is within that. But we do it because what it is we were men who came from a broken place ourselves. Okay, so I had a difficult divorce, right? But we came from a broken places ourselves where we lent on our friends or families, but there was just something wasn't there that was taking us to another place, to another level. Right? And so what it is that we were once broken men who healed through others and fixed ourselves. And we sit and we say we're not here to rescue others, because there's an analogy or a phrase that, by rescuing others, you rescue yourself. But what I think it is people who have been broken, especially within the community, have more to give, because they don't want people to feel the way that they felt because they know how it felt. And that's why we do it. Honest to God, that's why I do it. Because I don't want anybody to feel the way I felt. I want to feel them to feel lonely, isolated, broken, bitter, angry, all of these kind of negative emotions. You want them to feel, I can deal with this situation. It's not great, but they're making me feel empowered. They're not doing it for any other reason, for just for helping me. And that is really rare. And I get what you're saying. Society is what's there. Why they help me? What's in it for them? And that's the sad part about where we've moved as humanity, is because we've moved away from just doing something because you want to do some good. And you want to see that. And we've got too used to a culture or through the internet or social media where, it's narcissistic traits, it's kind of narratives, it's false premises, it's show and clout, as opposed to, somebody's doing an act of charity, but let me film it. Yeah, and all of these kind of things. It's no, we're doing things behind closed doors because that's the most genuine place it could come from without the need of attention.
Let's hear from Aaron, because Aaron is an active member of the local community as well.
Hi, guy. This is my first one of these, so I was just going to observe, but seeing as I'm being bullied into it, I'm here. So, yeah, so I work. I'm not a leader for Men's Share. I do some mentoring and some coaching. I'm friends with Sean from before I was involved in any of this. So I'm also a boxing coach. So I was going to pop in about the community because we have our own little community in martial arts. You have all the different gyms, they all know each other and they're all doing, shared goals, shared interest and stuff like that. But the community topic to me, I thought was interesting because no one said what I saw as community in my head when I think I do community work is the people that live around me. I don't have to particularly know them. They don't have to be part of where I'm from or have any. I spent last year with a little group called Tessa's Kitchen doing some feeding of the homeless and stuff. And that was the community work in the same way what Sheriff does and that. So I think community can mean a lot of things, can't it? My boxing gym is a little community in its own, but then the broader community of who lives around us and stuff like that. Oh, yeah, I don't really know what I'm going to add to this conversation right now,
but this is a great example, right? Because I never knew Aaron except through Men's Share. Now, me and Aaron probably two different communities altogether, two different backgrounds, two different behavioral types, two different everything, right, Aaron? Yeah, we can say that, right? But
I don't think that's
we've come together through the community work. Now you've got Aaron there, you've got me there. People would assume, well, how have these two come together? But we've come together by that collective ethic of work for the community, for men in a difficult space, because we ourselves have been in that space. But what we're doing about it now is learning. Aaron's a life coach, qualified learning life coach, getting certificates. I'm just trying to study to be counseling therapist at some point. And it's just like we've come together and we all come together, and that's trying to show is beauty is in the humanity and the being in what you want to give back in a positive space, in a positive way. And that's probably one of the most important things about that will make a community: shared skills, shared ethics, shared values, but shared goals, a shared objective. And our objective is the well-being of other men in this particular instance, but it could be anything, right?
Lewis, please.
Yeah, I was just thinking about what you're saying about community. And I'm just sort of wondering, thinking about the human condition, how we are as humans. And, to me, the digital world is not a community. It has to be physical, it has to be local. And I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts on what's the ideal size for a community, for a person, because you get too many, you can't be that involved, or you don't get the attention that you may want. You have too few, and it can be suffocating, or whatever. I just wondered if you have a kind of feeling for what's ideal in terms of size of community.
that's a really, really good question. And truthfully, I really wish I had an answer for that. I mean, when we're in the circles, sometimes it could be 7 or 8 men, up to 15 to 20. So it could change by week, and we find seasonally it increases when the dark winter nights come. People are more prone to the seasonal associated depression syndromes and all of those kind of things. So and so they'll come that way. But then size and scale, it's intimate when it's within a gathering, but then it's that whole digital space. When like you're in the digital space, it's you could be doing a live broadcast or something, and then you could be having hundreds or thousands of people viewing you, right? And it's so okay, so would they like to sit and say that they belong to this community? For example, with that speaker, Tony Robbins, yeah, his community, he would like to sit and say that his community is millions, and when he speaks, it's millions, and so I guess it's based on those who align themselves to that particular community, and I think the trick and the art is to make sure that no one is suffocated and everybody is seen. And the most important part of therapeutic counseling in any way is making sure that that person you're talking to at that particular time, particular moment, is seen. They're valued. We're attentively listening. And that's one of our promises, and when we're in our particular community group, is that we are giving you that kind of time so that you don't feel isolated. Or the trick or the art is as well, if you've got a circle going, knowing how to bring people in. So just now I'm like, Aaron, come on, mate. So it's like it's knowing how to bring somebody in, how to get their point, how to make them contribute, how to make them feel a part. But I think that's something you learn over time. It's something that I've learned over time. I used to be probably one of the shyest guys in the room back in my young days, and then suddenly you just get the confidence pill, and here you go. You're like, okay, who's next? Who wants to talk? What does it mean? And but what it does, it celebrates the other people in the room, right? It makes them feel involved. And again, that's another part of community work, is making somebody feel that they're part of it. If somebody doesn't want to be part of it, they will isolate themselves naturally anyway. They will take themselves away. If they definitely don't want to be part of it, they'll take themselves away. But before that, maybe it's I see you. Is there an issue? Is there something that can be dealt with? Is there something you're uncomfortable with? Is there something we can do to accommodate you? It's these things first before that thing. And hopefully that answered your question. But
There is a
it's
hand up,
interesting.
Joanna, please. And then Alfredo.
I have two things to say. The first one is I would love to challenge Louis on the sense of community, that it cannot be digital or local, because I feel ExpertEase is a community and it's digital and global. But that's my perspective. I think to get a little deeper in that is I think it's how we feel about it. A community doesn't have to be defined in a specific way as long as people come together. But that's, again, only my perspective. The second thing I want to say is what I wrote earlier on the chat while Shariff was speaking. I just wrote, it sounds to me like community brings perspective, allowing to step into identity, reinforcing internal strength. And a lot of what you said, Shariff, has been a lot about identity. Either people come from different region background or cultural, or whatever the difference is. The way you were describing it, it's almost like the fact he was mixed, they could finally step out of the friend that they knew and they had and get that perspective from other communities, other region, other culture, and and kind of have those perspectives. So the thing that I feel is like it's about helping them to step out of the box they've been put in. And that's probably what's creating part of the mental issue, is that they're in a box and they don't know how to get out of that. Now, as a few of you know, I've been doing family constellation for a year and a half, and Alfredo might be able to even back me up on that. One thing that is absolutely amazing in family constellation is there is a massive sense of community. When you come together, it doesn't matter which culture, background, ethnicity, religion, you're working on your family patterns and your family, ancestral repetition. And this is something I would highly recommend to men in general, because men have a tendency not to do it. And to go back to somebody you just mentioned, Shariff, Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins offers family constellation to his platinum members. It's 70 to 80% men. The reason I know that is my teacher is actually the one doing family constellation for the Tony Robbins events. And it's incredible the impact that it has, because everybody can relate to family, trauma in a way. And sometimes men are, you mentioned a few things based on the background and what happened to them. They feel bitter, they're angry, or they feel the weight of, maybe like being the provider, whatever that looks like. Very often, those don't come from them. They come from family, repeating the same cycle over and over. And one way to step out of that and to start breaking that is really to participate into family constellation. And I'm not trying to, sell you that, but it's something, we all come from a family. We all have the same issues. And it's a very bonding experience to be able to relate to one another in that way.
No, that's really good. That's a really good point. Yes, I think a lot of men find themselves raised in particular environments or particular upbringings. Or, for example, in my instance, for example, you get married, but her perception of what a man should be was based on her father and her brothers, for example. And so you're then being brought up with what your dad taught you as opposed to what their different value ethics was. And then all of a sudden there's this completely different, there's no alignment. There's no alignment in what they see your responsibilities are, what you see. And then that's when all of the issues start, right? And again, like you're saying, it's like everybody's being put into boxes, and you need to be this and you need to be that. Why can't we just be who we're meant to be? And I used to sit and think I needed to be everything to everyone, and I realized I can't be that. But I feel like I never chose this path. This path chose me. And so, as opposed to resisting this path, which would have caused friction, I've embraced this path. And from my point of view, it's like, well, okay, there's a higher power that wants me to go out and serve and do work based off my own experiences of life, or the people I've encountered, or the people I've listened to, or the things that I've educated myself around, or my role models, etc. And like, well, okay, this is what I need to do with myself. I mean, and I find the moment as a man, especially as a man, he learns to embrace that, he suddenly finds his calling. And I hope you could tell I'm really passionate about it, especially the well-being of just people generally, or humanity, or coming together generally, and putting aside differences and celebrating everybody. It's massively important, and that's what community is. So I'll give you an example. There's a verse in the Quran for me that says, "I created man and nations from different tribes and different colors that they might know each other." So in that own verse right there, it's that we all know each other, and the beauty of life and the creation itself and our differences and the heritage and the cultures, and we celebrate all that. That's community. That should be the global community. But we're not, because we've allowed ourselves to fall into the arenas of pride and arrogance and prejudice and all of these things that then it's like a cancer that eats away at that collective community, or the goodness that was always initially there from the start. Do you know what I mean?
All right. Welcome, Scott. We're talking about the importance of the community, and particularly local communities, and how we can get involved. Alfredo, please.
Yes, two things. I agree with Joanna. For me, there can be digital communities in that sense. This is a community where we lack the luxury of physical connection. We cannot be in front of each other, but apart from that, we act as a community. We have common interests. We share, we respect each other, and in that sense. And I guess this came here to stay, the digital world. So or if we do not try to develop communities on the digital world, the real communities might well be taking over in that sense, because every day people are just reaching out more to the digital world.
Well, it's a balance, isn't it? It's a
I
balance.
guess, yes. And on the other hand, I think this is a very complex matter in the sense that it all comes to our level of consciousness. There are communities who are very selfish, who just strive to get their own interest, who don't add value to society. So the way we see the world is really formed in our early years, in that sense. Our environment, family, school, where we live, our culture, our language, define who we are. But not many people then afterwards are able to judge that. So in a sense, we go in automatic pilot in that sense. So communities start to then move apart. Well, those who add value, those who don't, and so on. So it's very difficult, as Joanna was mentioning also. And the difference between men and women, for example, men used to be hunters, used to be more artistic. While they were hunting, women got together. They were gregarious, socialized more in that sense. But because what if my men didn't arrive? Then I got the support of the community. Men weren't looking for that. It's all entrenched in the way we've been evolving, and we are the ones who can start questioning that. But it's just a small proportion in reality. So you will always have people like Shariff, who is living his purpose, adding value to society. But whether there are others whose purpose are too egocentric in that sense. That doesn't mean it's not a community. We can look at nazism, for example, or the extremist world we are living within. So it's an extremely complex matter in that sense. So probably, communities are too a broad term in that sense. And here we are assuming that all communities are value, and no.
And I'm glad you talk about the digital, because I made some notes before today, right? And it was like, how does digital assets assist community? So accessibility and reach, right?
Mm-hmm.
Consistency of communication, social media, email journeys, digital community groups like ExpertEase, for example, right? Storytelling at scale. So digital lets shared lived experience content that normalizes things, encourages us to show up. A low barrier to entry, online signups, reminders. We can access our apps with ease, less friction. We can attend a session like this, right? Multi-agency coordination. So digital tools make collaboration smoother, faster, transparent, and collaborative. So for those are and it shrunk the world, and it shrunk the issues, and it's made everything more accessible. And then when I looked at the failings of the digital space, it was that false sense of connection. So online engagement can look high while real world participation remains low. Surface level interaction. Algorithms reward quick reactions, not deep conversations. Nuance and emotional safety gets lost. Isolation disguised as engagement. Consume content without reading it. So it's passive coping rather than active support, and over reliance on platforms and a lack of emotional containment. But what we're doing now is trying to dispel all of that, because what we do now is having a conversation that is far reaching, because you're all across the globe, we're all accessible to each other, and we are actually talking about something that's quite meaningful and important in all of our lives.
Yes, thank you. Louis, please.
Yeah, this is very interesting. Thank you, Joanna. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I suppose there are two things I wanted to mention here. One is we have to be careful, like with so many things like art and things like this, not to put too restrictive a definition on what community is, because I think it does turn up in all sorts of different forms. The other thing I was wondering, to turn this around a little bit is I used to, a long time ago, I did all the marketing work for an alternative holiday company. I raised the attendance up, to about 95% throughout the year. And it was interesting because you got all sorts of different types of people coming to these so-called holidays with facilitators who would do very deep work. I remember we had European commissioners and policemen and nurses, all sorts of different people. But the interesting thing was that I noticed, and I went on a few of their holidays to test it out, was there was a typical dynamic where everyone would start off saying, hi, who are you, what do you do, and all this kind of stuff. And then as the week progressed, everyone got closer together. And what was amazing was that everybody was exactly the same in a sense. And it was almost as if you had to, there is a natural community there of humanity that exists, but we've lost it. So it was always a case that you could see people coming back to being who they really are. And who they really are is pretty well always, I mean, in every case, I would say, very, very loving, very, very considerate, very caring, and so on and so forth. So it's, I think society has distorted us away from community that is naturally there. And that was a very interesting, revealing experience for me.
Yeah,
Actually, I want to say something about that, and I don't know if it's fully aligned, but I grew up in France, and it's a socialist country.
Mm.
And I do feel that somehow the sense of community and identity was removed because of that. We all go through the same education system. We have all the same classes, the same grade. We were supposed to kind of be all the same in a way. And that is creating a constraint that I had the pleasure to see the other side when I moved to the United States, which, maybe is a little too opposite, but you can be absolutely who you want to be. And, you get lost into the journey of finding out who you are, because to the opposite side, there is no frame to it that was given by the society I grew up in. But to me, the whole conversation since the beginning of today is about identity. Like, I feel we are all kind of putting the thing on by finding our own identity. We're just potentially feeling mentally better. And that comes from being confronted to the other, which comes from community.
Well, let's ask Linto, because I know that in Dubai, the situation is a bit different in terms of like community work. So do you have such thing, Linto, within your community in Dubai?
Yeah, so basically, from my experience, and at the age of 19, I've been to a community like St. Vincent de Paul Association. It was connected with the church, which in my native town, and they were into like providing services and financial support for the needed person, irrespective of religion or caste and all. And during that time, when I came into that, there was no youngsters like me, because I was just 19 and all the people were around 40, 50 age. So my other friends were recommending like why you are joining this type of community. And but once I joined, I was also skeptical during the time of joining. And once I joined, and we started the services, it was like a really good experience for me. Like I'm going to the homes and talking to them. Maybe there will be people who are a little bit aged, and like I'm touching different areas. So that was a great experience for me, and I'm still part of that community. And because of I shifted to Dubai, I was not able to attend this facility now. In Dubai, actually, as Louis told, the city life, the community is not so effective. Like everyone is busy, everyone is having their own priorities, likewise. So it is getting missed. And one more thing which I heard and read somewhere is like that previously the religions and the institutions like churches were focused on this community basis. And there were always the support for this kind of concerns or open communication. But eventually it got like, it transformed just to the ritual part, and that personalized element is lost. And that part, I think in the West also that's what happened. Like the religious communities or religious importance went down, and the community aspect lost its importance, I think.
I've got some questions maybe you guys want to answer. So what do you think is one of the things that you wish people understood about human connection? So like, did people have heal faster when they feel emotionally safe, or small consistent interactions, or human connection is a protective factor, it reduces isolation, etc. What do you guys think is the one thing that people wish they understood about human connection to make community space better?
It's an energy exchange and a remembrance that we are all one.
I agree with that. I guess it depends on your point of view. There are people who are egocentric. They just see their own benefit. Then you have people who are inocentric. They relate to their religion or their gender or their country or their race. And there are people who are more cosmocentric or world-centric. And they will define what you're asking for very differently. In my case, I see all of us as equals in that sense. So my approach will be totally different from one who saw the world as egocentric. And that will always exist. I mean, we go through the three stages, but many people get either in the first one or in the second one.
Carl, please.
Shariff, just ask that question again. What was the question? Why? What do I wish?
What is a human connection for you? What does that mean?
No. The question was, what do I wish people would do more, isn't it? Are you on mute? Sorry, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. What's the one thing you wish people understood about human connection?
Okay, so the one thing I wish is that people realize how accepted they would be if they pursued the connection. I think we due to rejection or being whatever, or society saying you're not allowed to do that and you can't behave this way, etc., etc., etc. We behave in a way that isolates us instead of behaving in a way of knowing that we would be accepted. And that would apply to me wanting to join your community if I lived near you, is that if I went there, I would be accepted and be fun. And I wish people would see that more.
So that's one thing I looked at this morning as well. What stops people asking for help? Like the fear of being judged or misunderstood, or not knowing how to articulate what they are feeling or what they need, or past experiences when reaching didn't go particularly well, or the belief
And
that
so,
others are coping better,
yeah.
or a lack of safe, accessible spaces. I
So
think
that pushes people away instead of embracing it.
yes, and that's why I sit and think where the digital side can help is that I try to push it as far as I can in terms of reach, in terms of audience, in terms of messaging. I did a campaign the other day that reached out to ladies looking to identify the vulnerability in their husband, and if they didn't want to talk to them, directed them to us. So it's trying to be clever and smart about the messaging as well, and that's and like with the little podcasts on TikTok, it's talking about things that resonate with people, and always finishing up with, if this is something that affects you, or this is something that is within your current existence, then feel free to reach out in a space. And we always emphasize a non-judgmental space. And I think that's really important, because I think everybody, especially in community environments, work faith-based, community-based. There's always that fear of some sort of judgment that goes with it, and that's why, like with the Men Share project, is we try to create a community space where nobody is judged based on whatever they're going to bring, whatever their background, whatever their preferences in life. They're just coming with what happens to be their difficulty at a time, and whether they can find a solution to it and to themselves.
So, question to Aaron: what's got you involved in the community, Aaron?
Hello. I don't know. I had my life fall apart a few years ago, and I made some changes with what I was doing and the stuff I could control. And one of the first things I did was I started, like I said earlier, I started getting on the streets and feeding the homeless with a little group that I was with. And it was good, it was nice. So the more positive stuff I did for the community, the more I wanted to do it, the more eventually, you know how everyone here knows the subconscious mind and repetition. You repeat an identity enough, and then it becomes part of you, or you become part of it. So yeah, so I started doing that. Then I started mentoring, because I'm a boxing coach. I've got a lot of young men from like different areas in life. So I started mentoring them, and then yeah, I got into coaching. Sean, who's the founder of Menshare, he brought me on board. He saw what I was doing. He's trying to help me launch my coaching business like properly. Him and one other friend. So yeah, that's kind of what got me into it. It was like, guess I was just putting some energy into some good stuff, and like, pardon my French, as they say, but I say to everyone, when I got into doing the feeding the homeless at first, my original motivator was I just didn't want to feel like a piece of shit for like 2 hours a week. And then eventually, you know, I started building a rapport and a bond with all of these people. And a lot of these people I would never have interacted with in my life. A lot of them were like not in communities that I was part of, not in places that I would have gone. And like maybe a few years before I had my own like individuation, I would have looked my nose down at them. But one thing I learned about that is, you know, if you were in, you know, they're just like me and you, like just in different circumstances in life. And if you'd gone through everything they had, if you'd taken every path and every turn and you zigged when you should have zagged like they did, you know, you might be in exactly the same position they are. And it like humbled me, you know, because they were all so nice and welcoming and stuff like that. And it was rewarding work, because it's, you know, as everyone here knows, I'm sure it's nice to do nice things sometimes, you know.
So, a question to you and to Shariff. I went twice to Crawley, and both times I came across this guy who lives in the phone booth. Remember? Do you
Oh,
know?
right. Yeah.
So, did you guys try to reach out to him to get him out of that, box? Because pretty much he lives around that area and he sleeps in the phone booth box.
Yeah, he's not there anymore. So I
Oh,
think
he's not.
he's not there anymore. I think he got. I remember reaching out to him one time and saying, "Look, we got a group. If you're interested, come along." But this is the thing: you can reach out to people. That people only would want to get help if they want to get help. That's one thing we've learned. And especially it's one thing with the circles where we learn. A man might come one session and he might not come back for others, because he feels either his problem's gone away when it really hasn't, or he's just found it isn't for him, and he needs to find another way to deal with it. And that's the thing again with community. You can reach out the hand and you can offer it, but it's dependent on the person that you are wanting to give it to, as to whether they wish to receive that gift. And if they're not willing to receive that gift, you can only do so much. And again, that's down to accountability. That's down to what do you want to do with where you find yourself and what they're offering you. And I do think that's a challenge for some men. I don't know. I can't speak for women, but I'm sure it's just the same. And children, we do work in schools as well with challenged children, and they might have childhood trauma or a difficult home life or a difficult background, and you want to give them these certain gifts of education and knowledge and life skills and what have you. But if they're not willing to receive it, there's not too much you can do other than let people walk their own path. And I think that's it as well. It's allowing people to walk the path. You've got to walk the path. My path's different to your path. It's different to Aaron's. It's different to Carl's. It's different to Alfredo, and everybody else on this particular call. And we're just walking our path, and along the way, trying to acquire knowledge and the skills that equip us to deal with our life ahead. But also, if we can along the way make interactions that build communities, that build networks like this, for example, where there is the hope of a positive outcome at the end of this session, for example, where we go away and we consider what is community. We're part of a community here already because we're discussing community, but we're discussing things that are bigger than community as well. Life, emotional well-being, physical, mental space, all of these kind of things.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, let's ask Scott. Scott, I know you already have loads of responsibilities, but how is it down there where you live? Is there a sense of community, of belonging locally?
Yeah, well, the town that I live in is in a lot of conflict right now, politically. I think that, I lead wellness retreats twice a year, and I see more community when we get people away from their routines and into nature. To Shariff's point earlier, the human connection is waiting to come out. And I think to provide that opportunity for strangers who don't know each other to come together to talk about real life things versus putting on the mask and pretending to be that role or that facade that we're kind of trained as children to become, strips all that away. And so I don't look at my local community and the politics as much as what can I do to impact having people feel seen, feel heard, maybe sometimes for the first time, and then try to help them learn to find that on their own when they come back from these retreats. And the sessions we have is one of the most powerful things I've ever experienced. And I think that's where I like to focus my energy when it comes to community.
Can I ask, how did the World Cup create? Did you find a change in the community dynamic when the World Cup was in America?
I'm in Salem, Oregon, so the closest we had was Seattle. And I saw a lot more flags flying. I saw a lot more, downtown Salem people yelling across the street for their teams. It was a huge community bonding event, and then it's over, right? And so it's temporary, I think, but it was pretty cool for the time that it was here, for sure.
Can I ask you, how does politics destroy community? I think we all see it, right? But how from your own lived experience, how is the politics destroying community?
Oregon is a very liberal state, and there's a lot of Republicans who have been trying to gain control of the state for many, many years. They don't like how the state's been run. And on top of that, right now, the big thing in Salem is they're trying to build a data center, and hundreds of people have shown up at city council meetings. It's very controversial. And AI is not going away, but we need data centers for AI. And so the controversy is between, do we establish this to harm our environment and can provide the convenience and the need for future growth. And it's pitting these things against each other. And it's getting, I've lived here most of my life, and it's getting the worst I've ever seen it. And I also
And
want to say it, I believe it's all coming up to be healed. That's my belief. It's all has to happen so that we can see the real issues, so we can have real conversations. But so many egos are involved, that the egoics may not get to that point. And maybe,
and it's really you mentioned ego, and it's something that, especially with men, is a big deal. And it's, what does my ego allow me to do or want me to do? How will my ego receive it? And all of these things. And so, for example, our community group is about the destruction of the ego. It's about the humbling of yourself. And again, it's one of those things that came up in the Odyssey yesterday with Matt Damon about the humbling of yourself. He saw what he did at Troy. He saw what he did to come back and step away and then realize to himself that brought no good. We were doing something for community that didn't bring any good to the community, but instead fractured the community, destroyed it, and left us lesser as a community than the one what we started with. And I think that's really important. And I think community leaders need to definitely step up and do that a lot more. Politicians seem to completely misunderstand that. And it's the people at the ground level, like ourselves, who are interacting with different people of colors, different faiths, different ethnicities, etc., and just want to live our lives in a harmonious space and way. Same with the workplace, right? Competing departments, all competing against each other, but the whole collective is for the cause of the company greater good. But then why is not everybody collectively working towards the same goal for the company? Why are the individual teams within that competing against each other in destroying the so-called brand culture of a particular business? So it goes not only at human level, it goes at business level, it goes at all of these different levels, right?
So you think if we remove competition, we would reconnect with our humanity?
Oh, that's a good question. That's very philosophical. See, I don't think there's anything wrong in competition as long as it brings out the best in you and you're striving to do good, because there's a lot of good to it. But if the competition then starts leaning into the self and ego and only this polarized vision of my way, nobody else's way, etc., or who I belong to and who belongs to me, then yeah, it's gonna cause what we see manifesting before us around the world, all these different issues. It's a prime example of all of this competing nature within politics, within economics, within who's got the most resource, who's got this, etc. And then all of that stuff then just translates even further just down the food chain, as it were, or Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where you've just got normal people like ourselves on a daily basis living out as a consequences of all of these people's other actions. And then it starts to play, then it starts to get into all of these different narratives that starts to break the cohesion in the country. You know, we have the issue here with the immigrants. Or okay, but don't go starting wars in other people's countries, because I might not necessarily come here. Or stripping of other people's resources. If you left their resources alone, their country is wealthy and empowered enough that they'll probably stay there and want to. There's consequences and there are bigger consequences of the choices that you make, or people above us that are making, that is impacting the social care within the community. It's terrible because there's no investment in it. And that's why groups like ourselves then set up to then try and go out there and do the work. And that's the one thing I think is that everybody knows there's a good nature to the UK whereby it's that help your neighbor kind of mentality. It's let's lean into that community spirit. Probably something from the war. of the generational wars, but it lent into community spirit, coming together to build it together, to do it together. And I think I'd like to think that's one of the best things about the UK, that despite all the narratives that you might hear, it's still here.
Okay.
And that plays out.
We're closing in 2 minutes, and it would be nice to hear from each one of you one small action that we could take locally. So if you have any ideas, please share them. So what would be one small action you can take within your local community? If you want to get involved in your local community, get to know your neighbors better.
You know what? I think with that question, it's like, I think what I would say to the guys here today is that lean into something that you're passionate about and where you know that you could give your energy. And that's probably, so I'm interested in the mental health space. If I wasn't, would I be in this space? Maybe not. Right? And so it's what do you
You're
what
also
do you
interested in sports, Shariff.
for me?
No?
Well, no, Sunny is. I mean, Sunny is. I mean, I recently
You're
took up
wearing
boxing, but I'm
Adidas
not really
shirt,
good.
so I think
Oh, right,
I
okay.
assumed you
Right,
were sporty, man.
I mean, it doesn't have to be a big project, or you can contribute on your daily basis, just treating nice people and add value. And if you get into a taxi, make his better day or her better day, her best day, something like that. Is a way of going by in that sense. I mean, it is not restricted into just one place.
I was going to say the same. I think I firmly believe that the greatest gift you can give another human being is allow them to be seen and heard. And just by saying hello to a cashier or asking the gas attendant what's the greatest thing that's happened to you today is indeed instilling seeds of community.
100%. So many people do not feel seen. They go about their lives and they don't feel seen. They don't feel heard. Even in the workplace, you can have one of the best workers, and they won't get acknowledged because they're not the one in the face of the director all the time. Yeah, or like you're saying, out in the street, just the opening the door for somebody, the hi, how you doing, or can I help you with that? Everything starts with small little seed. And then everything else after that is just the water you put on it to watch how it grows. The analogy of the tree, right? The roots that you put down, the strength that it grows to, then it bears the fruit, how it flourishes. And then if it's good seed, the seasons come, but it always will continue to flourish and continue to grow and prosper, and will remain in that place. And
so much, Shariff, for today's session. I commend you for what you do locally in the community. It's really wonderful and very inspiring. Thank you, Alfredo, Luis, Joanna, Linto, and Scott, for sticking till the end. We're taking the month of August off, so we will be back in September. You'll hear back from me early September with new weekly sessions. If you have any suggestions, recommendations, please feel free to send them through. And if you want to facilitate one of the upcoming sessions, let me know. And I guess some people...
Stop looking at me.
Exactly. All right. Thank you all so much. It's been really wonderful. Take care all and stay in touch.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a nice holiday,
Have a
you
good
all.
break.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.